We are live on GHOne TV as well. Is the assurance that regardless of the possible revenue losses, the commitment to scrap e-levy betting tax will definitely be fulfilled? Is that assurance reassuring to you? Because there are concerns that given the fact that we are not in so good times relative to our economy, some of these promises could be deferred.
You know, listening to the minister, he's trying to be the normal, natural politician. They want to please the public and say that, yes, we said we are going to scrap betting tax, we are going to scrap e-levy, emission tax. We have done so. That, politically, they can do that. But what is the consequence? The consequence is that there will be a revenue shortfall. And as indicated in the IMF program, even in our debt sustainability analysis, you have to match your debt service burden with revenue. So there's a debt service to revenue ratio, which has to be matched. If you scrap the taxes, you're losing revenue. Your debt burden is still the same. So you need to increase revenue in order to match up the ratio for parity to happen. How are you going to increase the revenue? It's not a matter of cutting expenditure. If you cut expenditure, it doesn't increase your revenue in any way. So you would then have to introduce another tax to make up for the revenue. And he certainly indicated in his presentation there are two ways to go about it. That is either they introduce another tax or cut expenditure. They should forget about the expenditure cut aspect, because that is not going to deal with the debt sustainability analysis issue that is required. What is required is how do you get additional revenue to replace what you have scrapped. And that is why I think that there's no other option than if politically they cancel betting tax, e-levy, they will still introduce another tax and mark it on the wall. Watch for this budget. By the time will come, if they scrap all of this, you will see them introduce another tax. And unfortunately, if you are not lucky, it's going to be higher taxes. You know,
they talk about effective revenue mobilization, which doesn't necessarily mean increment in other tax rate or introduction of new tax lines.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, you don't necessarily have to increase tax lines to get more revenue. In fact, the economic theories abound, Lafayette theory, to support that. But you need to be very concrete. You need to tell us exactly what are you going to do without introducing new taxes and still be able to increase your revenue. He is a finance minister to be. We need to hear from him. We need to have that assurance, and not just assurance by word of mouth, assurances backed by practical, pragmatic solutions. That is when the Ghanaian people have the confidence that yes, we can go to sleep, our taxes are going to be scrapped, and then we're still going to have increased revenue without the possibility of increasing taxes. That responsibility is on them. They have to tell us for us to follow.
Yeah, Doc, your party promised the same thing, scrapping these same tax items. How are you going to do that?
No, we have done it before. In 2017, mind you, when President Akufo-Addo and the MPP came, there was an IMF program in place. Okay, there was a lower growth, about 3.4%. But in that first budget of President Akufo-Addo, he scrapped or reduced about 17 different taxes in this country, unprecedented in the history of this country. So in actual sense, scrapping 4 taxes today is not news, because Akufo-Addo's first budget, he scrapped or reduced about 17 different taxes in the base of an IMF program. But the government was able to increase our growth to about 8.1%, reduce our inflation, attained primary balance. Government. How did you manage to scrap or reduce about 17 different taxes in your first year, and still you were able to increase economic growth, still you were able to increase industrial growth, still you were able to increase agricultural growth, still you were able to reduce the rate of depreciation of the city from 9.5% to less than 5%, and still the government was able to attain primary balance surplus, trade surplus, all of that in 1 year, and still had funds and money to fund other government expenditures like free SHS and everything, all in 1 year. 17 different taxes were gone. So today, if they scrap about 4 taxes, in natural sense, it doesn't match what Akufo-Addo did in his first budget. But they should be able to tell us that whilst they do so, how do they make up for the revenue shortfall, such that in our debt sustainability analysis, the debt service burden to revenue ratio does not become something perilous to us.
Yeah, 17 taxes. Somebody will argue that subsequently you reintroduce some of them in a different form.
They are yet to start. They should start from somewhere and let us see how it goes. What is important to Ghanaians today is the commitment they made to reduce the taxes they are talking about. We want to see them reduce those taxes, and as we go forward, we'll see what happens next.
Finally, assessment of Atufosin's display.
I think he did his part. The questions were also forthcoming. If I had the opportunity, I was going to ask him more difficult questions. There were questions I was going to ask him based on things he has said in the past, things he has said in his Facebook post, and ask him to explain to us and how he's going to avert some of them. There's also an issue of value for money, because as a finance minister, you take investment decisions and you take financing decisions for the country. For financing decisions, go to borrow. But we saw during the NDC era a lot of borrowing with higher interest rates. We had to be renegotiated by the Akufo-Addo government to lower interest rates. You can go to borrow on behalf of Ghanaians, but how much are we going to pay for the debt that you are accruing? We want to see. So I was going to ask him all those questions, citing the examples in the past, like the standard gauge railroad line, the Akosombo and the Pokuase interchanges, the loans they contracted, and we had to pay so much. It took the Akufo-Addo government to renegotiate the interest on those loans to lower interest rates. So he's the finance minister. Definitely, he has the right to borrow on behalf of Ghanaians. But at what interest rate is he going to borrow such that it does not affect the future of this country? That is so critical.
Yeah, he talks about value for money, independent value for money audit body. Doesn't that satisfy your concern?
No, it's not about the body. The body will be there, but the work they do matters a lot. Okay, so the body is, the work is equally as important as the body. So we want to see the work, the action, what we're going to do with the bodies. And I think if we do that, we'll be better Ghanaians.